Первый доклад у нас Keynote, Марк Смалли, Нидерланды. Марк, вам слово.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Oh. Could I have a clicker, please, for the presentation? Right. Great, thank you very much. The first DevOps Forum and the first speaker. I'm nervous. Thank you. I think, I speak, I train people, I connect people. I do lots of things in IT, in DevOps. One of the things I do is as an ambassador to the DevOps Agile Skills Association, which is a certification body. I write white papers from time to time. This is my latest white paper about the business value of DevOps. I have 9 white papers here. If you'd like one, please come to me. I'll even sign a white paper for you, give you an autograph copy. I gave a copy to Gene Kim last year. I had just bought his book, Accelerate, which is really good. And I gave him a copy of my white paper. And look how happy he looks with my white paper. Wonderful. Gene Kim, of course, you know as one of the co-authors of the Phoenix Project. And that's another thing that I do. I do the interactive game, the business simulation, the Phoenix Project, which is great fun to play. If you'd like to talk to me about that later, please do. Sorry, I'm lagging behind a bit. Yeah, just check. Which one?
Left, right?
Yeah, yeah. Great. Have you ever had the feeling that you're in project plan prison? You're trapped by a project which does not represent reality, but you have to report to the prison warden, sorry, the project manager, about meaningless milestones to give the project manager the illusion of control. Now, this is just reality. Project plans don't represent... Project plans... Is it me? You do it. Put... Where? There? Oh, there. Sorry, I'll stand here. It'll work better. I'll point it this way. And even worse, you have to escape from project plan prison to do the real work. Because the project plan isn't real life. So you have to escape from the project plan prison. And what I'd like to do with this talk is to help you escape, help give you multiple methods of dealing with different kinds of projects, because this is about complexity. I call the talk not if then else, but if then maybe, because you don't know. You're surprised by some kinds of activities. So this is, I think it'll work in the end. I'd like to give you a different way of looking at the world. Yeah, well, I'll do this, and you click. Right. This is a different way of looking at the world. You see, the size of the world is different than people think. The northern hemisphere is much smaller than we would like to think it is. It's a paradigm. It's a way of looking at the world. And I'd like to give you a different way of looking at the world. I'd like to encourage you to look at different things and see things differently. So this is what this talk is going to be about. This is wonderful, just click. Yeah. The talk is around this framework called the Cynefin sense-making framework, Kinefin. There's lots of material about this. It's been around for about 10 or more years now. You'll find lots of videos, lots of papers about it. What I'd like to do is to get the creator of the framework to explain it to you in just under 5 minutes' time. There's a video. Yeah, back. Yeah, this is, yep. Stop. Yep, that's it.
We take 3 basic systems here.
So it's a battery?
Complex systems, chaotic systems. We create a new category called disorder, and we divide order into 2, simple and complicated. In the simple domain, this is an ordered system. That means the relationship between cause and effect exists, is predictable, can be determined in advance. In simple order, that relationship is self-evident to any reasonable person, as a result of which the decision model is sense, categorize, respond. We see what's coming in, we make it fit previously determined categories, we decide what to do. The model here is that we apply best practice, a phrase which is legitimate in this domain, but illegitimate in other domains. In the complicated domain, there is a relationship between cause and effect, there is a right answer, but it's not self-evident. So I either have to deploy an analytical method, hence sense, analyze, respond, or call in experts who've built expertise within that domain who can make the right decision. Accordingly, I don't apply best practice, I apply good practice. Distinction between good and best practice is actually quite important. In a complicated domain, there are several different ways of doing things, all of which legitimate if you have the right expertise. And trying to force people to adopt one of them is actually quite dangerous. It will basically piss people off, to be honest, to the point where they won't apply best practice where it should be applied. It's a simple and complicated we're familiar with. Sense, categorize, respond. Sense, analyze, respond. Best practice or good practice. Complexity, on the other hand, is a system without causality. It's a system of light constraints on agents. Agents modify the system. So our decision model here is probe, sense, respond. We conduct safe-fail experiments. We don't do fail-safe design. If an experiment succeeds, we amplify it. If an experiment starts to fail, we dampen it. In fact, we shouldn't even do an experiment unless we've identified our amplification and dampening strategies in advance. And of course, what happens here is we get emergent order, i.e. something which comes out of this is emergent practice, it's a new way of doing things, it's novel, it may be some combination, but it's different and it's unique. In a chaotic environment, if we enter it deliberately, it's for innovation, but if we enter it accidentally, then we need to stabilize the position quickly. So the decision model is act, sense, respond. We move very quickly to stabilize the situation. Any practice will be completely novel in terms of the way things work. Now you'll notice that that gives us a very easy way of deciding how to work, but it gives us a divergent, we sometimes call this requisite applicability. It basically says, dependent on which space you're in, you should think differently, you should analyze differently, rather than a one-size-fits-all, which has been the tradition of management theory. Now the central space disorder, and this is key, is the space of not knowing which of the domains you're in. And that's where we are most of the time. And the trouble then is we will interpret the situation according to our personal preference for action. Now the danger is if you spend 2 or 3 years of your life in a purely bureaucratic process-based role, then you tend to see all problems as a failure of process. If you're a deep expert, then any problem is a failure to give you enough time or resource to do analysis. Natural complexity workers, battlefield commanders, politicians, their reaction to a crisis is to get lots of different people together from lots of different backgrounds in the desperate hope that somebody will come up with the right solution. That's actually quite a good strategy. And of course, the fascists love a crisis because then they can be given absolute command of everybody who has to do what they're told. So what you get in a normal decision environment is that people are in the disordered space, assessing the situation according to their preference for action.
One of the main functions of the Cynefin framework is to allow people to say, hang on a minute, it's complex, therefore we probe, or hang on a minute, that's complicated, which expert shall we bring to bear?
That might not be the situation. So be aware of your bias. The simple explanation of the obvious domain is is if, then, else. It's like if you have a password reset, there's a fixed procedure to solve the password reset. If, then, else. It's obvious. However, if it's complicated, you have to do some analysis. You look at this, you look at this, you look at this. Aha, you found the solution. The distinction is between obvious and complicated. Obvious is known, you have the answer. Complicated is knowable. You can discover the answer. There is knowledge and you can find it. This is different to the next domain, the complicated domain, which is a surprise. Huh? What happened? Things just happen. Sometimes things just emerge. So the key word there is, huh? What happened? And we are often in the complicated space. The complicated space is unknowable up front. So that's a distinction. Known, knowable, unknowable. And then finally, the last domain, what on earth happened here? Chaos. Something happened really quickly. You have to act immediately to stabilize the situation and get it back under control. So there you have 5 simple words categorizing these 5 domains. And this is really key to thinking about getting out of project prison. Projects are usually based on the complicated and obvious side of the framework, whereas we often have to escape from prison to get into the complex area. I'd like to put that into the context of DevOps. Now here we have a very simple depiction of DevOps, development activities, operational activities, with the infrastructure, the tooling that's needed both for dev and for ops. So we have dev, ops, and infrastructure, and that gives us a very nice positioning of a diamond, DevOps intersecting dev and ops and including infrastructure with CI/CD in the middle. But before DevOps happens, there's a prequel. There's business demand, business management, business planning need stuff. So you have to develop specified requirements before you can start developing. So there's a prequel to DevOps. There's also equally a sequel to DevOps. It's no good just having a system up and running until people actually use it. No value is realized. So that's the other side of the chain. I'm not really interested in what you call, just back one. And some people say that DevOps extends into the business side as well. I'm not really concerned about that. I don't mind what you call it. What I'm more interested in is the weakest link in your whole value chain. In DevOps, we look a lot at the speed of deployment from development to operations, and we've made great progress in speeding that up a lot. But I'm equally interested in how quickly do you develop the code, how quickly do you specify the requirements, and even more importantly, I think, how quickly do you come up with great ideas to invest in? Just think about how ideas emerge. Sometimes it takes years for ideas to emerge. What about speeding that up as well? So from a weakest link, a theory of constraints perspective, is your weakest link the time to market and time to customer? Or is it possibly the resilience of the operational information systems? Is it the conformance to governance, risk, and compliance requirements? Are you making the right investments? And crucially, the last point, are you getting the return on the investment? In other words, are the users using the system well? Because if they aren't interpreting the information correctly, if they aren't improving their decisions based on that information, if they aren't acting on those decisions, you've done great work, but they haven't got any value out of it. So it's about acting on decisions improved by information that they got out of the information systems that you made possible. Great, let's put Cynefin into practice, putting it into this little V model, realizing that on the left-hand side of the model, the research and development activities are usually less predictable than on the right-hand side, the operational activities. That's just the nature of business, and that's good, because when you're doing research and development, you want high variability because that gives you opportunities to earn money. And it's about the requirements, the priorities, the resources, and the practices. How known and knowable are those? I'll give you some examples using the obvious domain first. We'll run through the framework. In the obvious domain, if you know what to build, so if you know the requirements, if you know the priorities, if you know how many resources, how many people you need, if you know how to work, if you don't need to deliver in increments, waterfall is great. On the operational side, I mentioned the example of a password reset. If you have a known solution for a problem, follow predetermined process. However, in the complicated domain, if you know the priorities, know the requirements, but you don't know how long it's going to take, you don't know exactly how to do it, you could apply time boxing. That's a valid way of treating this work. On the operational side, if a user has a problem, but you don't have a predetermined solution, you have to do some analysis. We often call this case management. The next area is interesting. It's in the area between complicated and complex. That's called the liminal domain. That's in between, transition between the two. That's where Scrum is very powerful. If you have a plausible business hypothesis, but you don't know exactly what the priorities are, you can use Scrum to experiment linearly and incrementally. Scrum is a great way, a great tool in that area. Finally, in the complex domain, this is really interesting. If users don't know what they want, if you have unarticulated requirements, or if the hypotheses are conflicting or ambiguous, if then maybe, you don't know what to do. And in that case, you should apply multiple parallel experiments. I can give you some examples afterwards. We don't have the time to go into the detail, but just be aware that you apply different techniques according to the nature of the system that you're working in. This gives us the whole build of the slide. So this is the takeaway slide if you want the whole picture. I'm sure the conference will give you copies of the slides. If they don't, just send me a note and I'll give you them. Yep, great. So hopefully that gives you a new way of looking at the world, looking at the nature of the systems, looking at the relationship between cause and effect, the predictability, and seeing in terms of what is known, what is knowable, and what is unknowable, and particularly the unknowable part that will help you escape from project plan prison. That will give you a toolbox to help you escape, and as all good Russians know, one size does not fit all. Thank you very much.
Questions? Друзья, если есть вопросы, поднимайте руку, я подойду. Вопросы? Вопросов нет. Не забывайте оценивать доклады в приложении. Да, для спикера это будет полезная обратная связь, и для нас тоже.